Well, hello and welcome to the Power Couple podcast. Today, we're honored to bring back a very special guest. His name is Philip Godhelf. And Philip, we had on our previous episode, which we'll link in the show notes. But Philip is a world-renowned authority on energy markets and technologies, and his expertise dates back to the original formation of energy futures markets in the 1970s, where he worked directly with the New York Mercantile Stock Exchange to popularize their crude oil and heating oil contracts. And in 1982, Philip revived Nikola Tesla's magnetic induction light to achieve energy efficiency and longevity while reducing light pollution and protecting soil and water from dispersed mercury contained in fluorescent bulbs. And in 2007, he created Ultratech Lighting, which is now operating as Tesla Induction Lighting Co. And this type of lighting minimizes glare and light pollution to achieve dark sky compliance, addresses noise pollution that can disturb bats and canines, encapsulates mercury to render it environmentally inert, eliminates high frequency flicker that reduces strobe migraines and epilepsy. And that's what we're going to talk about today, how these street lights are more dangerous than even I knew, uh, based on how they flicker and strobe, and why municipalities should really consider replacing them, and what are the liabilities, along with so much more. So, thank you, Philip, for joining us.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to participate in these educational sessions.
Absolutely. The last episode we had, one subscriber, a couple of subscribers said that they've never heard as much information on light in one podcast as they did on that one. So, yeah, really, I appreciate it, and a lot of people also appreciate it. And for everybody here, just so you know, the Tesla Induction Lighting Co., the products don't just aren't just for streetlights. They extend out to everything from farms to stores to hockey rinks, all kinds of applications, car dealers, because the not to get too much into the science, but the way these lights work is they make things look better, basically. They make things look the way they should look. If anybody has ever been in front of a mirror in an LED light, you don't really look that great. So, these lights, not only are they healthier, they make everything healthier looking by default. So, anyway, that's my little ramble on that. But so, yeah, thanks, Phil, again. I was reading over some of these studies that you had in the street light brochure on the website, and it's just amazing how these street lights, well, number one, they're dangerous, but I know the Tesla lighting is a lot healthier, but tell people maybe why these LED lights, beside retinal damage, because a lot of us know, at least a lot of our subscribers know about the retinal damage. One thing that I was reading, though, that children are actually attracted to that bright light. They can focus in on it, which kind of was crazy. And I find myself sometimes too looking at that bright light. You just kind of want to focus in on it, which is, it's bad, but you still look at it. Um,
It's like looking at the sun, but then you realize that's not a very good idea.
no, at least not like, yeah, right away. Um, so beyond the retinal damage, tell us about flicker and how that interacts with, how we lose time while things are flickering in terms of feet and distance, and and then we can get into the hypnotic stroboscopic effect.
Right. Well, first, I'd like to compliment the invention of LED technology, which is fascinating to be able to extract photons from diodes in the way that they do. And anyone who wants to find out how LEDs were developed can look at least a few dozen presentations on YouTube, because it was not easy, but it was very exciting as the technology emerged because it was highly energy efficient, and we assumed that that was the overall objective. What we didn't really address were specific aspects of LED light formation. and that deals with the spectral output of the LED and the intensity of it from the source. Because we were so excited about creating LEDs that when I say we, I'm talking about the community, not me personally, because although I was excited, I was also somewhat skeptical because when you go at the ground level up and look at how the technology operates, you realize that there are particular faults, and one of the most significant ones is that they flicker. When I say flicker, it's more like a vibration of light that can cause strobe effect. And for those people who have ever gone to a discotheque where they may still have strobe lights, you know that it stops action and it's kind of cool, but it's not cool when you're driving at 60 miles an hour down a highway and the strobe effect takes away literally feet of depth perception. So you may think you're at one distance from a car's bumper when in fact you're much closer. So that's one serious issue because you can't really judge distances when you're under a strobe light. The second thing that most people may be familiar with is the fact that a strobe light can hypnotize you. So it causes you to go into a quasi trance. A lack of awareness while you're driving is obviously not a very good thing. For indoor environments, strobe lighting can cause headaches. You mentioned it in the introduction, migraines, and even some people get strobe epilepsy. And all of these things can be researched on the web. So it's not a matter of taking our word for it. It's something that you can self-educate about. So we do not manufacture LEDs. We manufacture magnetic induction lights. And the reason why we went to this ancient technology that dates back to Nikola Tesla in 1890 is because it's as energy efficient as LEDs, and for inrush current, it's more efficient than LEDs. So you're gaining that one focal point about LEDs, which is their efficiency, but you're discarding all of the negatives, which are the flickers and the intensity at the source. So you were talking about children being drawn to LED lamps. That the most detrimental case that we've heard of is when a child in a playground in Texas was convinced to look at a brand new LED installation in the playground because it put these little dots or what they call afterburns in the retina.
Oh boy.
Unfortunately, they challenged each other to do this too often, and one of the children developed a colorblind sensitivity. I mean, basically, he burned out his color sensitivity, and it was all because this was considered something fun to do. Now, no, you don't want to get involved in lawsuits and things along those lines. I mean, everybody was damaged from the manufacturer of the LED to the school that bought the LEDs to the child that lost part of his visual acuity. It's just an unfortunate circumstance and something that's not addressed by the LED companies or the people who inadvertently buy them because they're ubiquitous. They're just what we use today.
Mhm.
So our lights are now being manufactured and deployed in those areas where the people who are purchasing our lights are aware of the solutions that we provide and aware of the problems that they are trying to solve. And that would be things like strobing and light intensity. The other thing that has become a major issue amongst people who have photobiological sensitivities to the lights or uh, are photophobic is the other word that's now being tossed around, is that the blue area of the spectrum can affect our sleep patterns and can affect our hormonal levels, particularly melatonin, which regulates how we sleep. and not just we, but animals also are subject to the same processes. And so what happens is the human physiology was created either by circumstance or you might believe in the Almighty, either or, but we were subjected to two types of natural light. One was the sun, which goes from orange to bright white to orange every day and changes above and below the equator its cycle in terms of daylight time. And then we have moonlight, and that's it. And so the sun produces a very smooth spectrum, and we filter out a lot of the nasty things like uh, UVA, excuse me, UVC. So we have UVA and UVB that gives us sunburn, but UVC we don't have, and anything lower than that is captured by our ozone layer, I'm sorry. And we have to worry about the blue spike, which keeps us awake during the day. But when that orange light comes on in the evening, we get sleepy because that blue spike is taken away by the thickness of the atmosphere and the way that the sun is distributed through the more extended atmosphere at the horizon. And that's what causes the orange sunsetting color.
Mm.
Well, if you're a natural human being that's living out in the wild, the sun sets at a certain time and then you're in the dark. And if you're lucky, it's a full moon and you can see a little bit, but that's just the nature of the beast. Today, we go into the house, and if the sun was supposed to set at 8 o'clock and we're watching television on a blue screen and turning our lights on and they're LEDs, we're actually extending that exposure to those lights, and therefore we're changing our physiology and our hormonal levels and our response to the light. And the next thing we know, we might have developed sleep apnea or sleep dysphoria. And this is just goes on and on and on. So our whole design is for three things. One, obviously energy efficiency. Two is healthful light, light that doesn't make you sick. And three is light that enhances our environment as opposed to pollutes our environment. So when you have those three things together, you are basically a responsible person because you're lowering your energy footprint, you're lowering your carbon footprint. That's on the first prong. The second prong is you're not making people sick. You're not negatively affecting people's health. So that's the second prong. And the third prong is you're not polluting the environment with all the chemicals that are in fluorescent lighting and LED lights.
Mhm.
And so that's our approach. But for people who are interested, certainly if you're wondering why you might get tired driving down a highway, it has to do with the intensity of the light and then the drop in the light and the intensity and the drop. And that's basically the way a watch works when you're being hypnotized.
Mhm.
It's not your fault. It's the technology that's impacting you.
Right, right. And speaking of, so thanks for breaking all that down. With energy efficiency, I know that they say that, LEDs are energy efficient, and, they're rated in lumens per watt. But don't they degrade really quickly as soon as you flip the switch?
Well, there's what's known for all lights, there's what they call the burn-in period. And so all these lamps, including incandescents and fluorescents and halogens, they're all rated at when you plug them in for the first time.
Mm.
And then the burn-in causes a deterioration in the output of the lamp, and then it stabilizes. So LEDs can drop, depending upon the LED, it can drop as much as 20% in the first few hundred hours of operation, and thereafter it's stable for a while. So you have that issue when someone says, well, my LED produces 150 watts per lumen when you plug it in the first time, but it may drop down to 100 watts per lumen after the burning period or a short period thereafter. But if you do a search, and you have to be very specific in the way you word searches on AI platforms like ChatGPT or Grok 4 or 3, or even Copilot from Microsoft. If you say, I thought I was going to reduce my electric bill by installing LEDs, but for some reason my electric bill went up.
Hmm.
Can you please explain that? You don't even have to say please to a computer, but
Well,
and then see what results you get from your AI platform. And it will explain to you that all of this hype about the energy efficiency has to take backseat to the realities of the technology, which is that they're not so energy efficient. And in an industrial setting, they produce a tremendous amount of heat from their drivers. And then what you're saving in what you think is the lighting, you're spending in the air conditioning system, particularly in the summer. It might be helpful in the winter, because it lowers your heating bill, but not by as much as your electricity goes up to cool off the place. So all of these subtle realities don't sink in when you're either getting the sales pitch about LEDs, or you're going to the store and you're buying an LED floodlight for your backyard, or a municipality is making a decision to install LEDs in the city because they think they're going to save money. And then in the end result is that they cause more accidents, make people sick. And in Brooklyn, they replaced streetlights with LEDs, and they were so disruptive to the population that they were forced through a lawsuit to take the LEDs out or to change them in some way. And what happened? Well, all of the money they were going to save on the energy reduction end up spending to lawyers.
wow.
So, it's multifaceted, and we're trying as best we can to address all of these issues.
It's kind of like it almost reminds me of trying to think of an analogy, but when the computer first came out, right? LEDs in everybody's mind, when you hear LED, in somebody's mind, they're like, oh, energy efficient, right? When the computer IBM first came out, you thought, okay, great, solid computer. But then eventually that was improved upon. Then we had Apple, right? Macs. We had so now we're in this transition phase, really, where in the customers or the person's mind, you hear LED, you think energy efficiency, but in a couple of years from now, we may think clunky, right? Hard to dispose of, uh, energy inefficient, backwards. So these are all kind of things that psychologically, I think, as a society, the more of us talk about this kind of thing, eventually the image will change in people's mind, and it already is with a lot of people that you serve. Um, but yeah, that was just a thought. What about the recycling costs? So if you're a municipality, say you buy 100 of these bulbs or street lights, and then you have to get rid of them, you know, what does that cost the town?
Well, there again, you can have some fun with AI and actually ask the question, in California and in 36 other states, there are now disposal fees for LEDs, and they can range from a few dollars for a household fixture to 50 or $100, maybe even more, for an industrial fixture. And this is because it's been categorized in California as e-waste,
Hmm.
and you just can't toss it out. So you have to get a e-waste hauling company to take away your lamps, and you're at their mercy. Whatever they're going to charge, they're going to charge. And in California, that's acceptable. And again, you can look it up on your local platform for artificial intelligence. And it give you a whole dissertation on when this started to happen, which is recently within 2023, 2024. And people are finding out that when they want to throw out 50 lights, it's going to cost them $100 a piece. Well, that's a heck of a lot of money.
Wow.
You talk about $50,000 to throw out lights that
Mm,
cost you a, a few bucks, $100 or $200 a piece. Is my math correct? Yeah,
mhm,
50.
mhm,
Yeah. So no, $5,000. I'm sorry.
mhm, mhm.
I got a little suspicious
Uh,
of that myself. Uh, but that's maybe the cost of the lights originally,
mm,
or certainly a good portion of it. Now, why is that? Well, it's because if you look up the aluminum compounds in LEDs, they're incorporated into the diodes, and you can't really effectively or economically extract them in a recycling process.
mhm,
So we're creating this massive quantity of lamps throughout the world that we never, or I should say, the industry never considered at the end of life. What's that going to do to the environment? So, yeah, hopefully, most of our listeners, your listeners, are too young to remember the original Earth Day, but
mm,
we were concerned about soil pollution, water pollution, air pollution, light pollution, and noise pollution. That was it. We weren't calling for a reduction in CO2. Um, so we've lost sight of that, but not completely, because the disposal companies realize that they have to handle this stuff very carefully, that it has to be processed in some way, and they don't have that way yet.
mm,
So until we come up to what we call cradle to grave scenarios for this technology, we've got the cradle, we make it. And by the way, even the cradle is a polluting process, because handling those chemicals and the waste of those chemicals in the process of manufacturing is a problem. That's why the Obama administration's EPA made this manufacturing illegal in the United States. So, we may not realize it when we're talking about China and Vietnam, but, our lights are made in foreign countries because of how polluting the process is to manufacture. That includes, by the way, the mercury in fluorescent bulbs, compact fluorescent and fluorescent bulbs. So you got that to deal with. And then at the disposal end, the mercury is still there, or the aluminum compounds in LEDs are still there. And what are you going to do? So you're going to end up putting them in a landfill, and if the landfill leaches that into the water table, now you've got a soil issue, you got a water issue.
mhm, mhm,
And so what are you going to do? You're going to incinerate the material? Well, then you got an air pollution problem. So, so we have because we're environmentally conscious, we have a different philosophy, which is our lamp has to be 100% recyclable.
mm. Wow.
So our mercury, which is, as we mentioned, solid, can be broken off and recycled without ever touching the soil, the water, the air.
Philip, can you grab that lamp? Maybe just show people, since we're talking about it, what that kind of looks like?
Sure. Let's see if we can get that up close
Yeah.
and personal.
Oh, okay.
So in this light, there's a little tab located at the bottom. Let me see if I can point to it, because it's very small. It's right over
Oh, yeah.
here.
Yeah. Under
And
the
that
ring
little
there.
tab is all the solid mercury that gets broken off at the end of the life, which, by the way, is 100,000 hours or 11 years if it was on 100% day and night for the entire year. So these lights can last 25 or 30 years. So they're not going to be hitting the landfill that quickly. So
Wow.
that is recyclable 100%. The rest is glass.
Wow. Yeah, see, and that's why they say not to have mercury fillings in your teeth, and why a lot of people who are electrically sensitive to wireless radiation from cell phones and electronics, it's a good idea to get your mercury amalgam removed, because when a magnetic field is applied to your head, or if you're just sitting,
It can remove it, just
right,
like we're doing in the lamp,
right,
and
but
then
that
it returns.
exactly, but
Right.
that mercury then circulates through your brain and everything else. Phil is using the same technology, but he's circulating that mercury. We're using a magnetic field through the lamp, which is quite ingenious.
And then, just for kicks, that's hmm.
And again, we can't give Phil 100% credit because it's something that Nikola Tesla thought up. And, this is why Edison didn't want this to come out because this light was called the forever bulb and it has over 100,000 hour life cycle. So it can last 11 years. LED manufacturers will say that their lights last a very long time, but that's never been proven yet in reality.
It's mostly simulated, yes.
Mhm.
But the installations in we have installations that are 15 years old
Mm.
with not a single failure.
Wow.
But Tesla proved that his life, he called it the forever bulb.
Hmm.
That's why he got into a fight with Edison because Edison said, I don't want a bulb to last forever. I'll never sell another bulb.
Right.
So,
Right.
and I don't want an energy efficient light because my boss, people who finance me want the grid to spend as much as they can. So earn as much as they can.
Hmm.
So that was an interesting departure to say the least. So I just was going to try to demonstrate the lights, but what we can prove, obviously, is that the light does not have the same glare because, for example, if I were to activate a um, LED and point it at the camera to this computer, it would wipe the entire video out.
That's true.
So if I point the street lamp at the camera, if I can get that operational, I didn't put it on the plug, but it would not block out the camera. It would be just you'd see that there was a light on, but the intensity is not enough to cause problems. And that's important because the camera is sort of like a human eye in the sense that if we're standing and there's a light in our face that's overly intense, we're not going to see anything beyond that light.
Hmm. Hmm. True.
And these are the issues when it comes to dark sky. You want that the light intensity shouldn't be so much that it creates a visual contrast that basically drops our acuity as opposed to enhances it.
Hmm.
We are remarkably created in a way that we're supposed to be self-compensating. So when the technology overcompensates, it doesn't help us.
Exactly. And a lot of the lights, so the three issues with um, where lights lose their, I guess, efficiency or power is the glare is number one, but then they bleed out. And then what was the other one? Up, there was a third one when it goes up. There was,
Yeah, well, it's the bug rating is
all right, the bug rating. That's right.
right. It's the below, up, and G. So
Glare.
G is glare,
Right.
and U is up, and B is how it spreads below and around the lamp. And all of those become issues uh, because of the way that it creates a lighting inefficiency. Uh, Light is probably the most next to water, it's probably the most remarkable thing that we encounter as human beings.
Mm,
It's basically everything,
mm,
you know.
hmm.
Not to get religious, but even the Bible says, "Let there be light."
Yeah,
You know,
that was one of the
it's the
first things.
first, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know whether the physicists will prove that or not, but you know. the Big Bang, who knows what it came from. But the essence is that everything depends on that one fundamental, light
Mhm.
and water. But light is number one, photosynthesis, vegetation. We herbivores eat the plants, we eat the animals, and everybody survives, except
Exactly.
those except the ones we eat. So, no offense to all the vegetarians and vegans out there, but I'm just saying that light is so fundamental.
Mhm.
And so, who are we to think that with the creation of these lighting technologies, that we're going to address such a broad aspect of existence in reality? And that was why Tesla was extraordinarily careful when he was creating his light. He wanted a light that, I mean, this guy was probably the first naturalist of his kind that hit the face of the earth.
Mhm.
Which is one of the reasons why he wasn't particularly successful as a business person.
Right, right, right. Very true, very true. But I think people are starting to appreciate it more and more. Um, now that you mentioned light and life, of course, everything from birds to insects to bacteria to deer are affected. Flowers, all those reproductive cycles, hormonal cycles, uh, and they, of course, reside on the sides of the road that we're driving on. Oh, sorry about that. And so what happens when we're driving and those white lights, those LEDs, are on the sides of the road? Of course, it illuminates the road. But if we put, a lot of people want amber lights, they want darker lights. But doesn't that present a problem now if our cars have these high energy laser beams and then we have amber on the side? To my understanding, then things can hop out. We're not going to see, right? Because we're focused, or that beam is focused directly on the road. Um,
Well, that's an issue that's really a paramount one because there's health issues and comfort issues and many other things associated with the use of what they call warm lighting, amber lighting that originally came from sodium lights. And uh, that doesn't mean that an amber light can't be offensive if it's overly intense. But what the uh, ophthalmologists have discovered, along with the biophysiologies of the brain, is that when you're concentrating on this white intense beam that's coming out of these new LED lamps, and if you're contrasting that against your streetlights that are amber and a much warmer color temperature, your brain focuses on what's in the white
mhm,
and therefore ignores what's on the sides of the roads. And so when a deer is munching and decides he's going to jump out into the road, you're not going to see him, even with those wonderful headlights. Now, the truth is, if the headlights themselves were amber, it would get rid of that contrast. But there's no way you're going to get the Department of Transportation to approve of an amber headlight unless it's a fog light.
mhm,
So we're stuck in a contrast of technological reality versus technological implementation. So we everyone knows that your streetlights should match your headlamps. But by the same token, the Dark Sky International is advocating for amber, which is appropriate because it's a more comfortable uh, type of light for us under those circumstances. Now we've got a quandary of which do we want to emphasize, the safety of the road? Now, you don't have to really worry about that in a neighborhood.
mhm,
In a neighborhood, The amber lamps are fine because you've got ambient lighting all over the place.
Hmm. Right.
But on a highway, that's another issue. Or on a roadway that's in the mountains or in the valleys where the animals could jump out onto the road, those are issues that we need to try to address to the to the for the best compromise.
Hmm. And
Or unless we convince them to stop making those headlights as intense laser beams as they are.
well, that would be great. That would be great. But for now, like you said, we're in a quandary, and that's where the Tesla lighting comes in because this lighting, okay, it's not amber like a lot of us like. However, it irradiates out, it incandesces equally. The spectrum is not just in that sharp blue, it's not a sharp laser beam. So the spectrum is a lot more biologically friendly. And to my understanding, it would then light up the road a lot more evenly with no dark spots or shadows of the sort. Is that
And,
correct?
and no spectral contrast. But keep in mind that we can drop our color temperature all the way down to the color of an orange candle. So
Right.
we can satisfy whatever the net requirements of the community happen to be. And that's important when you're talking to people who are sensitive to certain spectral outputs of light. And they need to make sure that their crusade to light in the way they want to light can be satisfied by a technology. And when you're looking at an LED that looks orange and is producing a huge spike in the blue, well, okay, now it looks pleasant, but it's still making you sick. What good is that?
Hmm.
And it's a deception because the LED company is relying on the fact that you don't see that blue light. Your brain sees it, but you don't see it. Consciously, you have no idea that that light is just as bad as the whitest light you could possibly be looking at.
Wow. And that's a whole nother conversation with color temperature, but yeah, the spectrum, the only way you're going to know is by knowing what spectrum that is. And that's why these lights are fantastic. They use what's called lumen tech. So like Phil said, we can finely tune that spectrum to whatever you want, which is really incredible. And it is crazy. I would never think that looking at an amber light that there's blue light inside of there. Like, how is that even possible? Like, how does that even happen? You know what I mean?
It, exactly, and it's because there's a high blue bias in all LEDs. It can be filtered out, obviously, with
Mhm.
lensing and phosphorus and other ways of manipulating the light. But the LEDs, unfortunately, have very discrete outputs, so they spike in various ranges, and they don't give you this smooth. Now, this is something I hope they're technologically working to overcome. But it's a business. And if they don't have to overcome it because nobody is aware of it, they're not going to spend the money to overcome it. It's as simple as that.
Right.
So it's one of the most intriguing efforts is what these soft lighting or softlight.org, softlighting.org.
Softlights.org.
And
Yeah.
softlights.org, and it's extraordinary. Their effort is really at a grassroots level to prevent intense lighting that's this harsh white, highly blue light, and to keep people in a standard of much less intensity, which is a softer light, and to emphasize the use of amber lights because that's more appropriate for the comfort levels of people in neighborhoods and in even areas of natural environments where there's no contrast issue involved. So if I were going to install lights in a park, not a sports park, but a park on a trail, well, I would want to have a very amber, comfortable, warm light. Period. It's no
Hmm.
discussion. But I don't want a blue spike in it because I'm going to disrupt the circadian rhythms of all the animals that might be in the same location.
Wow. Yeah, and honestly, I never even knew that if it's amber, that our brains would still see the blue in there. But that doesn't surprise me though with LEDs, because it's more of a computer chip that could be modified electronically than anything else. It's not like an incandescent bulb, of course. So.
Right. But the other thing that people don't realize, we have other cells in our eyes called non-visual ganglia. They're sensitive to that non-visible, almost ultraviolet light. So a blind person who still has his non-visual ganglia is going to be able to adjust his circadian rhythm properly based upon the fact that he's being exposed to blue light in the daytime.
Mhm.
So these are issues that you can disguise the color of a light to get a reading from a light meter or a spectrometer that says that these two lights are 2700 Kelvin or even 1800 Kelvin, and one light looks whiter than the other. And you say, well, but they're both 1800 Kelvin or they're both 2000 Kelvin. How's that possible? And you look it up on, again, a chat GPT or AI, and it'll explain to you that Kelvin temperature doesn't tell you the full spectral output of the lamp.
Hmm.
And it certainly isn't going to tell you about how much of a blue spike there is between one type of technology like LEDs and another like magnetic induction.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's such a complex topic, and that's why I'm grateful to have found you because you're honest, genuine, and you're passionate about the biological aspects, which a lot of you're still in the business, obviously, of lighting, but a lot of engineers don't necessarily know the biological part of lighting. And so it's one of these topics that, like you like to say, it just goes on and on and on. Um, but
And 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 even if they do know, everybody is in business. Even I'm in business. I mean, if somebody tells me I want a light that produces this spectral output, with Lumentech, I can produce that light. And so if he's willing to pay me, I'll give him the light that he's looking for.
right.
And that's the problem with the model is that the LED companies and the buyers of LEDs, the users of LEDs, they're in business.
Mhm.
And the extraneous altruistic aspects of health and landfills and pollution, they're secondary because I'm going to live hopefully 80 years, 90 years, or what that's, I'm not saying me personally. I'm saying
Mhm.
what the guy who's in his 50s, I'll be dead by the time that becomes a problem. And I want to enjoy my life because I want the money.
Mhm.
And the guy who's buying on behalf of the municipality is thinking, well, the mandate from the mayor or the governor or whoever it happens to be is reduce your carbon footprint,
Mhm.
lower the energy cost, lower the energy consumption. He's not thinking about the animals. He's not thinking about your circadian rhythm. He's not thinking about the flicker. He's saying, where's the cheapest LED streetlight I can find? And that's what I'm going to use.
But don't the Tesla lights also reduce carbon footprint? I mean,
Absolutely.
by default,
As as yeah, as I mentioned, we replace a 400-watt streetlight with 100 watts.
Oh,
So we do the same thing that an LED does, only better,
oh.
because we don't have inrush current, which is a whole different subject that probably is beyond the scope of this
Hmm.
podcast, but certainly could be another one, which is,
Mhm.
all these questions that you can now ask AI, easily ask AI, is, I can't tell you how many warehouse people have swapped out their old metal halides for LED lights and found their electric bill goes up. Well, that's not supposed to happen. Now, their operational energy costs have gone down, but they get hit with something called power factor penalties.
Mhm.
And who knew that the power factor on these wonderful LEDs might be only a zero point 0.7 or zero point 0.8, and your utility might charge you for that if you're anything under zero point 0.9.
Mhm.
Well, no one told me this. Now I put all these lights in, and now I've got to pay more for my electricity, even though I'm using less.
Wow.
And again, the good news from my perspective is you don't have to take my word for it. This is something you can verify on Grok or Chat or Copilot or any number of other platforms.
Mhm.
And that's good for me because look, I don't want to sound like a snake oil salesman or something
Mhm.
along those lines. I want to make sure that everyone can verify this because you have to be able to trust what it is you're finally making a decision on.
Mhm. Absolutely. And of course AI isn't perfect, but there are so many resources online. I mean, even Google Scholar, you can look this stuff up. The information is there, as Phil's point. So verify it, and which we love to do as well. And just kind of, it's funny with you're saying how people or they don't care about the climate or whatever, but the LEDs, it's so funny because they have it's again this marketing thing in the buyer's mind. It's like, oh, they're environmentally friendly because they're more energy efficient and all this stuff, but it's kind of like the compact fluorescent bulbs that were around. They said, oh, this is great, it's going to be better, and then they were a disaster, right? So it's kind of like we're repeating that history again with LEDs. So I just hope that anybody listening to this will share this with people with homeowners or whoever who is sold on LEDs as being something great for the environment. They're actually, I don't want to say all of them, but most of them are the exact opposite. They don't save you money, they cost you more money. They don't save the environment, they trash the environment. And if
And
Tesla
they're
light,
bad for you.
yeah, and they trash your body, and they trash your body, which our listeners know. But so please, share this message with people that you think will listen or may be interested, because it really, twisted my head around. I always knew LEDs were bad, but I never knew about this magnetic induction lighting until, well, I knew about Tesla's technology, but I didn't know about it until a few months back. So that's why I'm just so passionate about it. Um, so yeah, thank you, Phil. Is there anything else you'd like to say to our listeners?
Well, the only other thing is that Tesla was so remarkable. We can make lights from infrared heat lights all the way down to ultraviolet sterilizing, sanitizing lights.
Mhm.
Because his technology, magnetic induction, can produce any wavelength at very powerful outputs in all kinds of ways. So this man was probably an alien that we'll discover.
Mhm.
But definitely was a remarkable intellect, and I'm very grateful that I came across his marvelous inventions to be able to share them with the public in a responsible way.
Thank you. Thank you, Phil. I'm grateful to him and you as well, and all of our listeners who are taking the time out of their day to listen to this podcast. Um, thank you
And our
so much.
website, if they're interested, is Tesla Lighting Co. That's Tesla Lighting Co. All one word, co.com.
Okay. And then there's also Tesla Induction Lighting Company.com.
The Tesla Induction Lighting Company is the name of the company, but it's a little awkward to put that all in as an address, but you should
Hmm,
be able to get it to us at teslalightingco.com.
gotcha. Okay. And I'll leave that link in the show notes as well, so you can just click it and yeah, reach out to us with any questions. Thanks again, Phil, and thank you to all of our listeners. We'll see you next time.
Take care. Appreciate it. Bye bye now.